Monday, September 25th, the day after Ravens, Colts, and of course, Baltimore loses to Indianapolis 22-19. We got a lot to cover. A joint simulcast is on deck here across all the Bobby Baltimore platforms, The Vault and Exit 52. And without further ado, let's bring him in. Spencer Schultz, one of the main co-hosts at Exit 52, along with the other guys. You know him. You watch their stuff. Banks, Eric, Jake, Taylor. Am I missing anybody?
Banks, Jake, Eric, Taylor, Spencer. That's the crew, man.
And Spenny. And of course, Benny and Spenny. So a lot to get to, man. Obviously, figured we could do this, a little lunch hour live stream. Lots of content has been released over the course of the last 12 hours or so since this one finished up. And we're going to get to some Q&A as well, and also open up the FaceTime lines for guests to join the conversation. So let's begin with what I just watched. I don't know if you have yet because you've had a busy morning outside of the digital space. But as there often is, there's been some overreaction from some of the national outlets so far today. A lot of it has to do with Todd Monken's offense. And Pro Football Hall of Famer, former Ravens, Super Bowl champ, all the decorated stuff. Shannon Sharpe got up there and did not mince his words whatsoever about what he's been seeing from the Ravens. We'll react to it on the other side.
Because I don't see the ooh la la that everybody told me I should expect from Todd Monken. I see the same offense that I saw the last couple of years under the last OC. So I'm looking for Lamar to push the ball down the field. I know there's no OBJ, and look, guys, everything is not going to be 75 and sunny. You're going to have to find a way to move the ball even when it's inclement weather. So we can't keep using, the wind was blowing. It was raining. Lamar's going to have to do a better job. He and Kenyon Drake going to have to do a better job of protecting the football. But I didn't see anything. I was expecting to see Lamar push the ball down the field. I was expecting to see these formations, a lot of trickeration, a lot of window dressing. I see the same offense that everybody was tired of seeing over the last 4 years. I see no exoticness to this offense.
Spenny, fair or overreaction?
I usually don't speak in definitives, polarized like that, so I'm going to cut it right in the middle. There is fairness to it, and it is an overreaction at the same time. Shannon Sharpe mentioned there wasn't a lot of razzle-dazzle. There wasn't a lot of flair. There were a lot of similarities. It was a lot of underneath guys all running hitches and Lamar Jackson trying to read leverage and get the ball out. Shannon Sharpe's right. The Ravens didn't push the ball down the field. Now, is there more context as to why? Absolutely. And that's something we could spend probably this entire lunch hour talking about. But at the end of the day, he mentions the fumbles. He mentions they didn't push the ball over top. And people, Ravens fans specifically, are tired of hearing about injuries. But let's look at what happened last week and what happens next week. Where does this Colts game lie? This Colts game lies between lodged in, three divisional games in 4 weeks. So for what to happen yesterday, maybe the Ravens did look ahead a little bit. They are missing a lot of guys. Ravens fans don't want to hear that anymore. They're sick and tired of hearing about the injuries. It's been 3 years of it. But both statements are true. The Ravens need to be better. And there are excuses, context, reasons as to why. So we saw them open the game with a clean, long touchdown drive, 80-yard touchdown drive. We saw them do that in Cincinnati last week as well. They were able to go get a 7-point lead on their opening offensive possession. Then things started to get a little bit hairy. It did feel like in the second half that a lot was asked of Lamar Jackson, and there wasn't a lot of help, a lot of getting the ball out of his hands. But you're down your left tackle, your center, 3 running backs. Odell Beckham's not on the field. You're playing a knockdown, drag-out game. Hey, it was inclement weather. The Ravens do have to do better, but I think maybe they looked ahead to the Cleveland Browns and Pittsburgh Steelers coming down the pipeline. Hey, we're going to play Gardner Minshew. Hey, we got a lead in this game early. Then things got sloppy. It got hairy. You can make excuses. You can not make excuses. But I think there's some validity to what Shannon says, as well as a lot more added context needed.
Yeah, you do wonder how much of the actual game he was able to watch. And you wonder how much, if he's got like a little Broncos hangover. We all know that Miami hung a 70 spot on his former Denver organization. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if you think about a week ago, what the conversation was, and obviously it changes the demeanor, the tone, everything after a loss. But don't you feel like that's more fair what he's saying today than it was the first 2 weeks. Okay, yes, Houston felt like a preseason game in a way when it comes to the overall operation, some of the kinks there. But yesterday, when you take a look at what happened when Kenny and Drake fumbled that football, and you just kind of alluded to it a little while ago, momentum shifts is one thing. They just could not, for whatever reason, adjust after that. And it seemed like it was just an operational flaw. And that's something that we've seen a little bit over the last couple of years, operational glitches, whether it's just the overall polish of the offense or in this case yesterday, just a lack of flow, a lack of being able to stack and move the chains. And so, man, I can't remember a play that almost depleted them the way that fumble did, and like sustained depletion the way that fumble did yesterday.
It was deflating. You're spotting the Colts, a team that's without their starting quarterback, a team that has a rookie head coach and rookie quarterback and picked pretty darn high in the draft. Possessions. You're spotting them a possession in the red zone. The Ravens have had a fumbling issue. They have, while one was negated, they have fumbled in their own territory 3 consecutive weeks and lost the football. So you're keeping teams in the game by doing that. Plain and simple. If you turn the football over in your own territory, it's going to cost you. The Ravens defense ended up, I believe, getting out, allowing just a field goal after that happened, which credit to them. But I think a lot of this, again, and fans don't want to hear it, but it's hard to have your entire starting offense on their P's and Q's, executing at a high level, cohesive, and then have 5, 6, 7 more guys that are going to come in, especially on the offensive line, things like that. So as well as, hey, this Ravens team has started pretty hot offensively quite a few times over the last few years, then sputtered out late and felt like they had nothing left in the bag offensively later in the year to go to evolve into. So what we see in the second half of this game is that the Colts start bringing pressure and the Ravens weren't in sync. They were able to get pressure quickly on Lamar Jackson. That means someone's going to be hot. Someone needs to be able to recognize, hey, Lamar's going to have pressure in his face. I need to get my eyes back to him. I need to make myself available and ready to receive a pass immediately. Now, there's more reason to that. I think this is where the growing pains will be, but learning can come from. When you see these pressure looks, we hear Todd Monken, you're going to get to the line faster in this offense as opposed to previous years, right? You're going to have more time before the snap, number one. Number two, you're supposed to have answers for these situations. You're supposed to be able to go have time. Lamar Jackson can bring someone in motion, say, oh, well, this guy's coming or this guy's not coming, or here is what coverage they're going to run, and then check into something. That's supposed to be the Todd Monken effect, right? Get to the line early and then have an answer, giving Lamar Jackson the freedom to check in and out. It's a little more difficult when some of the guys are not your starters that have worked in camp. It wasn't abbreviated camp, but they need to do a much better job at the line of scrimmage, solving those problems before the snap.
Spenny, in that same segment that we just played a portion of from First Take and what Shannon Sharp had to say, Ryan Clark went on to kind of share some thoughts of his. He sort of echoed what he was hearing from Shannon, the lack of exoticness, how similar it feels to Greg's offense, even though there's obvious changes. But they were really just highlighting the lack of creativity. But Ryan essentially suggested that maybe there's too much of an emphasis on change, and that's almost overwhelming Lamar. Do you get that sense whatsoever off of yesterday?
I haven't been able to go back and watch everything quite yet. I worked through some of the first half. It feels like there's a lot of similarities. A lot of it is option routes. A lot of it is being able to read a Mark Andrews or read leverage. The one thing I think that would have helped them was being a little bit more familiar with what they had done. The Ravens have Sam Mustipher as their starting center, Pat McCary. Hey, it worked out well last week. The Colts have a little bit more talented pass rush, a little more scary pass rush. We've seen Greg Roman over the years bring Pat Ricard onto the football field to go be a 6th offensive lineman and get Lamar time. We saw the Seattle game a few years ago, for instance, in Seattle during Lamar's MVP year. Had to bring Ricard in because Jadeveon Clowney and the Seattle front was wrecking shop a little bit. We saw them do that against the Colts in 2020 when the Ravens had a stagnant offense in the first half, then go win in the second half. They used a combination of a couple things like tempo and bringing in Ricard. So we saw Todd Monken start to do that. They bring Pat Ricard in, then they get back away from it in the second half. So I think it's a tough lesson to take of maybe not doing enough to win this game, but maybe taking lumps that you needed to take and getting reps that you needed to take. I think the Ravens probably thought they were going to get away with this one. So, hey, the Shane Steichen Colts look like a pretty darn good, well-run football team. They're running a field goal gambit, making the Ravens have to maybe burn a timeout that they might have needed later. They're doing some tinkering, some interesting things. So I think that we maybe need to give a little bit of credit to the Colts too, who played a hell of a game, while the Ravens did manage to let the game slip through their fingers 4, 5, 6 times at the end of the game too.
The self-inflicted wounds are something that I woke up this morning just thinking about, that it was hard to overcome how many self-inflicted wounds the Ravens just plagued themselves with, in the fourth quarter and overtime, right? You think about the lack of communication on the fair catch, getting to your rookie and letting him know what needs to happen there. Instead, you gift Indy with essentially an extra timeout, right? Lamar taking that sack when you got to throw that ball away. That's the last thing you can do there is take a sack. Ball security. And yeah, it was. The conditions were not. Were you out there yesterday, by the way?
I was.
You were? Okay. How much do you think, because clearly it was only one side of the ball that was affected though, but how much of a factor was the wind and the ultimate slippery conditions?
I would say there was virtually zero wind, which was surprising, but there was very little wind in that stadium. I think you can see on all of the kicks in that game, the ball didn't get taken off its path. Matt Gay was able to make 50-yard field goals. Justin Tucker just short on a 61-yarder. They were all pin straight. So the wind wasn't really a factor. It did get wet at one point. It was slippery. I think that does hurt footing a little bit. The ball is slick, but it's slick for everybody. It's like the Super Bowl last year where we're talking about the grass impacting the Eagles, but not the Chiefs. It impacts everybody. You just have to make do with it. The Ravens also, I don't know what's happened the last few years, but it's kind of like the Seattle of the Mid-Atlantic now on Sundays in Baltimore in the fall. It rains a lot here. The Ravens should be prepared for that. It shouldn't be an excuse, as opposed to a team in the Indianapolis Colts that plays in a dome.
Should we share our exchange that we had over the hose drill?
We can, yeah. I think the hose drill's great. They just didn't do the
fun
hose drill.
purposes, or for fun purposes or effectiveness?
For effectiveness. That is how you're supposed to do it. But we saw guys try to scoop and score. Was it Jeremiah Moon tried to scoop and score? The drill wasn't a scoop and score drill. The drill was a cover up a wet football drill, and he didn't do it. And hey, you got all that end zone in front of you. You want to score a touchdown in your first NFL, big game. It's tough. It's tough. He had the play in front of him, but I think if you did the drill, then you get the ball probably. So that oblong leather thing is a little bit more tough to corral than people think, I think sometimes.
Moon's window was there. It's funny. I just immediately started thinking, like, there's not very much fun implemented into a John Harbaugh-led training camp. Maybe there is now more so than earlier on in his tenure in Baltimore, right, when he was kind of in that hard-ass phase. But yeah, my initial reaction was, is that fun over actual purpose? But hey, we can have that.
That's something. I mean, at that point, if you're an NFL player, you've done drills, jumping on footballs,
sure,
I would say 500 times in your life. If you play from the time you're 10 years old to the time you're 23 years old, let alone 30 years old, you've jumped up and covered the football in practice. High school coaches love that stuff. This is basic stuff. And I think that breeds to a bigger problem, is that the Ravens have lost the ball, I think, every time they've put it on the ground so far, and then haven't been able to go, give themselves a break on a loose football there that could have been a huge, huge play for them in that game.
Yeah, and the carelessness, though, just in terms of coughing it up, if we're talking about Lamar's lack of ball security, has been jarring to watch. Every single game so far this season. That's very uncharacteristic of him, especially when he's in kind of rolling out or even in the pocket too. Like, he always I feel like, that the eyes behind the head thing with him, like, that's why it was so shocking to see him take that sack, right, in crunch time, because he's always so aware of where guys are and so obviously elusive, but he's not often run down. And not only was he run down, but the decision-making there to hold on to the football and then get stuck and put your offense in a really tough spot was just very, very surprising. Speaking of Lamar, though, this came out last night. Wanted to get into it. Jordan Schultz, NFL reporter, he got an interesting note, as he writes here on Twitter, from a scout on Lamar. And that scout told him, quote, he's played pretty well the last 2 weeks, but I actually think there's another level or two for him. Monken is trying to empower him to be the best version of himself. That'll pay off down the line for them. I think we're going to see more design runs like today, but he's also throwing the ball well. That's really the priority. He's comfortable in his pocket, which can lead to more success, end quote. Nothing groundbreaking about this, Spen, but obviously this should probably be one of the takeaways, is that there are growing pains. Yesterday was a growing pain type of day, and it sure looks it's making Dan Orlovsky's point from a few weeks ago on ESPN look more and more age pretty well here, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's the thing here. This is a long-term shift, hopefully, where what we talked about previously, Lamar Jackson is getting empowered. To me, what that means, empowerment, means at the line of scrimmage pre-snap. That means that he is going to have more ways of having answers presented to him from questions that the defense poses. That was an issue with the Ravens' philosophy in the Greg Roman years of let's get to the line late, let's milk the clock. That's not going to give you more time to diagnose where the blitz is coming from or able to shift motions for the sake of IDing what a defense is doing. So it's difficult to watch days like Sunday, but the hope is that in the long term, it's for the best. And it's going to be have these issues now so that you don't have them again later. That is the glass half full perspective. That's tough to watch and say and see for some people because it hasn't happened yet. So you're still waiting for it to happen and be consistent and be smooth and ironed out. So until we see consistency over a 3, 4, 5 week period, hey, a team wants to basically pressure Lamar Jackson in passing downs, and the Ravens are able to sort it out, check to the right play, make themselves available for him. He's able to cleanly get the ball out ahead of the rush or make the right decision. I think people are going to be skeptical. We're going to hear these talking points about it. But at the end of the day, go look at the Dallas Cowboys, who had a really tough day against the Arizona Cardinals. Go look at the Seattle Seahawks, who had some trouble with the Carolina Panthers, teams that were pretty heavy favorites on Sunday that weren't able to really make haste. It's early in the year. Teams are still working through things. Preseason's abbreviated now. Camp is less intensive. Guys need reps in game. It's a long season. Hopefully the Ravens are able to move forward and find answers to those questions.
Let's open up the guest lines here, a new feature that I've been tinkering with here on the channel. I just dropped in the live chat the link where you can join the show for 30 seconds, drop a Q&A in there, maybe even just make a point and join the show. So you can do that through the live chat link that I just dropped in there. But let's get some Q&A that's coming in, Spen. And one is here from Ed via Facebook. Is Justin Tucker hurt or just getting older? We could have used him multiple times after his miss. Based on what John Harbaugh had to say, first of all, it was a 61-yard miss. Okay, in no other NFL market can a fan base be collectively shocked, stunned, surprised, whatever, when their kicker comes up short on 61, right? It's been like we could probably all agree from that standpoint. But to me, Harb said this was a footing thing, right? Was that your when you said you were at the game, so wind wasn't a factor, but slippery conditions were, so it sure looked like that was just a footing decision.
Yeah, I think on top of that, we've heard Justin Tucker. I'm actually trying to filter through some stats here. I'll try and find it before the end of the show. I think that would have been tied for the longest field goal at M&T Bank Stadium history. There aren't a lot of 60-yard field goals kicked in that stadium. And Justin Tucker has said, when asked in press media availability, what's the hardest place to kick? He has said M&T Bank Stadium, Heinz Field, whatever it's called now, notoriously difficult to kick at as well. So was just a long field goal, didn't have great footing. And yeah, I mean, hey, if you expect Justin Tucker to make 61-yard field goals every time, that just shows how elite he is. Don't think he's hurt. Don't think he's getting older. I think we saw him bang one in preseason in a clean game, a clear weather game. He hit, I think, a 61-yarder as well. So it was a little short, but footing, tough, and couldn't get it done there. But if you're relying on 61-yard field goals every time, it feels comfortable for Ravens fans, but they're probably the only fan base in maybe the history of football fan bases to consistently expect Justin Tucker or expect their kicker to make those. So it's a shame. It was true. It was straight, just didn't quite have enough leg on it.
Plus, like with this dude, Matt Gay, having the day of his life, you have to think about, especially down the stretch where, a field goal wins it. You have to be careful the way the field position flips, assuming that if Justin can't convert, So that I'm sure went into it as well if I'm John Harbaugh. Let's open up our guest lines like we mentioned here just a second ago. Mark's going to be joining in a minute. But again, I just dropped the live chat link that you can access our conversation and join for 30 seconds to hit us up in the conversation here. So let's bring in Mark. Mark, welcome into the show. I think you're on mute right now, so we can give you a second to figure that out. But once you do, we'll bring you back in. Instead, we'll continue to work through the Q&A in the live chat. Spen, you see anything that pops out to you?
See what we got here. We got King Royalty, Ryan Clark or Shannon have not watched the games. They've been looking at stats and highlights. And again, shout out Brett Coleman, who does some great content on YouTube. I think we see that. He had a breakdown of the Bengals game preview last week that I was just like, how could you kind of have that feeling about what he had ended up saying? And another gentleman, Dalton, who works for Pro Football Network, said it's hard to cover all 32 teams. And B, nobody's watching all 32 teams every day, every play, every game, every week. So, yeah, they get asked, they get paid a lot to do better than most probably could, and I think that they have good hit rates, but it's tough. That's why people don't want maybe as much national coverage all the time. They want to get more dialed into the content they consume on a day-to-day basis for the team that they follow.
Over 360 folks joining us on this little day after lunch hour live stream. It's a simulcast. We're live on Exit 52. We're live on Bobby Baltimore, The Vault, across all platforms. Glad you're with us. Subscribe to the channels if you haven't already done so, and like the video so that other people can discover what it is that we're building here in Baltimore. Mark's figured out his mute section here, so let's bring him in. Mark, what's going on?
So Lamar yesterday had pretty good passing stats, still a high completion percentage. Did this feel like another good passing game if you remove the fumbles, or did it seem more like padded stats because of shorter passing and maybe holding on to the ball when he shouldn't have?
Thanks for the call, Mark. Spenny, I'll let you take that.
I think that it was difficult. The Colts put a lid on the Ravens' deep pass ability, and it's kind of what we've seen Mike McDonald do. He sets those two deep safeties on the roof and says, hey, you're going to throw in front of those guys, not behind them. But you can't, just because the defense does that, you can't let them dictate your ability to push the ball downfield. If you play their game, you're doing what they want you to do, and they're going to be happy with that result. Even if they don't win, even if you still beat them, that's how they want to lose. They want to lose by you throwing over their linebackers and in front of their safeties. So it felt like a lot of the errors late were, again, the Colts maybe bringing pressure and guys not getting back to Lamar quick enough. If pressure's coming, that means someone is hot. That means if you play Madden, there's going to be a free receiver quick. First two steps, look, sit, look, get them the ball 5 yards. Then the defense will stop pressuring you so much. And if they do, you're happy. So that's been a consistent issue with the Baltimore Ravens offense over the last 3 years, I'd say, is not being able to get the ball out quickly against pressure. But the alternative is, hey, maybe we put a Pat Ricard on the field and an Isaiah Likely on the field and ask them to block instead of a Melvin Gordon or a Kenyon Drake who haven't gotten much in-game reps. Hey, let's go help the offensive line out. Lamar Jackson's quicker than a rabbit. He can run around if he wants to a little bit. He did in that game very much so, made guys look silly. That will buy us time to push the ball downfield. That will make sure we have a higher likelihood of getting a clean pocket. If you have 6-7 guys in who you probably trust more than Kenyon Drake and Melvin Gordon at this point, and hey, those guys are pros, they're vets, they haven't played in this offense. So they're going to make mistakes. That's what's going to happen. It's rare for any player to come in, new team, new offense, whatever, and immediately just getting their 99 PFF grade, hitting stride, never making a mistake. So with that, I think there was a little bit of a mistake of not only letting the Colts dictate how you were going to throw the ball, but also not asking too much. I should say but asking too much of guys that haven't played a ton. And that's the issue. That's not by choice. The Ravens have J.K. Dobbins out. Gus Edwards gets a concussion in this game potentially. Goes into protocol. Justice Hill's out. It's tough to have 5 running backs ready to go. So I think maybe that was a little area they look back and say, man, maybe we should have gone empty with no running backs. Run some 0-1, 0-2 personnel instead.
We're getting to you, Johnny D, in just a second here, but let's go to the live chat just because this is kind of a perfect segue to what we were just discussing here a second ago. Mr. Chief writes, did yesterday show the need for 2 good running backs? The difference between this game and last was having Gus and Justice available to ice the game. Spenny, the need for 2 good running backs, you could look at the last 2-3 years in Baltimore. They always need 2 good running backs. That's just the reality of it since 2021. And yeah, so Gus goes down after taking a pop on that 2-yard run, and he did not look good in the sideline. So hopefully he's doing okay. You get the sense that, you'll have to monitor his status over the course of the next couple of days in protocol. But now you're looking at a situation where, gosh, I mean, honestly, the box score for Melvin Gordon didn't jump out at you, but what was it, the third quarter, where he actually gave them a little bit of some juice, a shot in the arm, if you will. And I'm sure John Harbaugh wasn't thrilled to have to kind of go to him, but that was his only option, especially when Drake fumbles it after a 20+ yard burst. It's slim pickings at this point. After week 4 is when Keaton Mitchell, the undrafted rookie who showed out in preseason, will be eligible to come off of IR. So that's sort of the tough reality that's there right now.
It certainly is. And you nail a good point. Melvin Gordon did a ton, particularly on that drive, I believe in the second half, might have been the third quarter, to be able to help out. Has a gain of 15 yards, has a couple nice pickups in pass pro, able to go make a little bit of hay later in that game. And then when you're without Gus Edwards, it's a little bit tough sledding. And it's 2 guys that, again, haven't been on the field in this offense prior to Sunday. And yeah, Gordon made some plays. So it's ironic, Gordon, and I've personally made some jokes. He's led the NFL in fumbles as a runner or any non-quarterback since he entered the league in 2015. And my prediction on Thursday on the Exit 52 preview episode was that Melvin Gordon fumbles deep in the Ravens territory. Lamar Jackson fumbled deep in Ravens territory, and the other back fumbled, but not Melvin Gordon. So he looked all right. He stepped up, I would say, definitely, and the Ravens are probably a little happy with what they saw from him. But to answer the question, yeah, they do need 2 healthy backs, I would say. Even 2 good running backs, but 2 healthy running backs for a month, a year, something like that. So, people get into that whole running back shelf life conversation, things like that, but they just have not had any luck in the injury department when it comes to that room.
I'm happy to have some grace for Kenyon too. I thought that, in a relatively small sample size, I think actually maybe it wasn't that small, but 11 or 12 games last year, he was relatively reliable for them. So hopefully he can serve as that exact kind of source this upcoming season, depending on how much they actually need him. Let's go back to the guest lines here. Again, we have the live chat access link available for you if you want to join the conversation. We're capping these about 30 seconds or so, if you don't mind, just so we can get as many people involved in the conversation. We got over 400 people joining us this afternoon, a little day after lunch hour live stream with Spenny. We're simulcasting across all of our platforms, something that we're going to hopefully continue to do more of. So Johnny D, you've been waiting for a while. Where are you calling in from, and what do you want to talk about?
Calling in from Bel Air. How are you guys?
Great.
So real quick, I mean, all the errors aside, and there certainly were a comedy of errors in this game, but to me, it all comes down to right after the safety, right? I think the clock was kind of an issue, and I think the Ravens got kind of a bad call there, because if you go back and watch it again, when at the end of that play, there was 1:58 on the clock. So I think the Ravens thought at that time that it was the 2-minute warning, and they were going to do the 2-minute warning in the break between the safety and the free kick, right? But when the Ravens took the field, and Harbaugh said this, he coached Flowers to do the fair catch, right? Thinking that the 2-minute warning already happened. But when they took the field, they reset the clock to 2:03. So the 2-minute warning didn't happen. And apparently from Harbaugh's, statement, he could not get Flowers' attention to tell him to run around for 4 seconds, get it under 2 minutes, so you don't give them a free timeout, right? So I understand that, but why didn't Harbaugh just call a timeout? We had 2 of them, right? Why not just call a timeout and tell them? Why not tell somebody to jump off sides and tell them? I mean, this is the key of the game. If we run around for 4 seconds, the game's over, right? All of this conversation is like a moot point. And I just don't understand again why he mismanages the clock consistently.
You're spot on about all that. Appreciate the call, Johnny. We'll react to it in just a second. Thanks for calling in from Bel Air. Appreciate you for dropping by. We're gonna get to as many of those as we possibly can as well throughout the show. But Spen, I mean, there's nothing really else to say to that. I mean, that was the game within the game, the clock management, the game management that was just inefficient. And can you expect a rookie in Zay to kind of like not one up his coach, but basically like counter it and just do something on his own? It's one thing if we're talking about a veteran, but it's and the guy hasn't even done a ton of returning. We know he did it in the summer, right? So I'm not going to fault him for that. He's just essentially kind of going with the game plan that's been followed through for him. But that was one of those ones where it's a self-inflicted wound there this time from the coaching staff, which you'd never expect.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point about Zay Flowers, he did what he was asked to do. He was asked to fair catch the football. He fair caught the football. To John's point, the thing that stands out to me is why not call a timeout to make sure you're on the same page? Because John Harbaugh says we didn't want to use a timeout. Well, when was that timeout going to come into play if you did use it and got it right? Maybe the first time you would need that timeout would be that maybe the Colts are going no huddle with about 20 seconds left in the game and got the ball back after getting a stop. So he makes an outstanding point. I think that it was a mess at the end of that game, a terrible decision not to use a timeout in hindsight that could have run the clock down to at least probably, I think about 27 seconds, if I'm not mistaken, was the fastest the Colts could have gotten the ball back. So that timeout wouldn't have been needed in the first place. Why not use it to make sure everyone is on the same page? Not, did he hear it? Did he get the communication? Leaving that chance at the end of a game. That Lamar Jackson taking a sack, Isaiah Likely's drop, all were really the daggers that took this win away from the Ravens and turned it into a loss. If you want to look at the glass half full side, Matt Gay, shout out to Matt Gay, had an absolute day on a rainy day in Baltimore. It took 3 50-yard kicks, the first kicker in NFL history to make 4 in one game, as Bobby, you put on the screen here.
That's absurd.
On a rainy day, too. So it wasn't.
And you're facing the greatest of all time on the other opposite side.
They should get a little. Matt Gay should have had some sort of fun chain to celebrate on the plane ride home for what he did. Matt Gay had a day. So let's say 4 50-yard field goals on a rainy game from your opponent. You fumble the ball and lose it 3 times. You miss out on a fumble. The referees don't help you out on a defensive pass interference. And that's what it took to lose. And you mismanaged the clock at the end of the game. That is how much it took for the Ravens to lose this game. It took all of those. It was a perfect storm. So when we get back to maybe kind of what we started with, Shannon Sharp, is this, an overreaction or whatever it is? It took a lot for the Ravens to lose that game. And you're down 9 starters. It took a lot for the Ravens to lose that game.
We love Unk, but I'd imagine seeing that 70 spot that was hung on his former team has him feeling a little some type of way this morning. But actually, I want to get to that. There's a new look, and we're going to get to Sip to Tally and a few other guys that are waiting in our live guest room right now. So glad you guys are with us. We have over 400 folks that are joining us right now for our simulcast here across all of our platforms the day after lunch hour live stream, something we're going to be doing on most Mondays. So we're glad you're here. If you haven't already done so, please like the video that you're watching on and subscribe to all the channels as well so that we can continue to build what we're building here in Baltimore. Here's a look that Jonas Schaefer tweeted out earlier today, the end zone look of the Zay Flowers no call, and it's even more egregious than the other replay. Take a look. Well, what do they call it? A hitch? Is that what it is, Spen?
The route that Zay Flowers ran?
No, the DB. What he got? How he held him there?
Yeah, it was a little hitch. Yeah.
I mean, clearly inhibits the route and his path to the football.
He was just, he was early. That's what pass interference is. He was early to the receiver. It prevented the receiver from being able to make an attempt at the reception. So is what it is. You hate to make those excuses, but you look to it. That's going to happen in games. There is going to be the referee error. It's going to impact both teams. It won't impact the Pittsburgh Steelers very often for whatever reason, but the other 31 teams, they usually have the flip of the coin of the referee. So, if you want to make excuses, you can make excuses. If you don't want to, then don't. Some people like to point to the refs. Some people like to say you shouldn't have been in that position. I think that's a subjective opinion that everyone's entitled to have on either side of the coin there. But that's the definition of pass interference either way.
I'm certainly the latter of those two. The self-inflicted wounds were just too much. And at some point, you don't put the game in the official's hands. That's one of the classic phrases. And that certainly came back to plague the Ravens. And by the way, the one rookie moment for Zay, I'm not going to call the fair catch a rookie moment whatsoever, because as we already talked about, he was instructed to do that. Not running out of bounds. That was to me, that was a rookie moment there that hurt them from a clock standpoint, overall clock management standpoint. So between that, Lamar taking the sack, I mean, it was just one after the other. Sip to tally. We're going back to the guest line. He's not just a guest. I've had him on the channel before. What's going on, brother? Happy Monday.
Not much. How you doing?
Good,
getting a screen right here.
Hey, there you go. What's going on?
I just had a question. Last week we started off with a good first drive. This week we started off with a good first drive. I'm thinking those plays are scripted, which they going over them, every practice, every meeting. But once we get off that script, it looks different. So what do you guys think about that? The whole offense looks different once we get off them first 10 to 15 plays. Are they not in tune with what's going on? Because with the script, it's what's going on because you work on them every practice, every meeting. But then once you get into stuff where he just had to call it off the cuff based off of what the defense doing, it don't look as hot.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with, like you said, walkthroughs. Friday, you're going to walk through the script. You're going to walk through those 10, 15 plays. Everybody knows their assignment. They're going to be comfortable with that. Then it sounds like this summer was a little bit abbreviated for the Ravens. They were focused on health, not maybe wealth, to put it. They wanted to make sure guys made it through a camp where instead of really trying to come out of the gate storming, feeling confident in September, they wanted to be healthy. So did that end up helping them out? Not in this case. They are very banged up, and a lot of those are, contact injuries, guys getting rolled up on. But I think with that in mind, again, it's hopefully that you can get healthy, which, Bobby, you shared about Colin Cowherd, I think a couple weeks ago. Colin Cowherd, I thought, made a valid point. He said, I'm not going to consider this team a contender because they can't stay healthy. And I think based on the last 2 years, the Ravens haven't been a contender because they haven't been healthy. Yes. And it's a little bit guilty until proven innocent in that aspect. So when you got backups in, they're not going to be as comfortable with the full playbook. They haven't gotten the reps with the first team, the timing, the cadence, everything's not going to be there. So some people consider that an excuse. I think it's just a fact. I think it's a reality. And guys weren't as comfortable once they got past what they made themselves comfortable with in walkthroughs, things like that. So it's nice to see that what they are comfortable with is just cutting into the end zone. But after that, it's going to take a lot of work. And with the way the NFL is now, you don't get that much practice time during the season. There's not a lot of contact. So it's got to be a lot of mental reps and a lot of guys dialed in the meeting rooms.
What Colin said's fair. The same way that people have questions about what Lamar can do in January. It's fair because the last 2 years in January hasn't been available. And even though it's a small sample size, that 1-3 postseason record doesn't give you a lot of confidence in January either. We hope that he can, buck that trend coming up in 2024. Hey, Sip the Talent. Coach, what do you got going on the channel today?
Just breaking down the cluster. I already got a video out talking about shooting ourselves in the foot, using a 8 Mile reference as calling us Cheddar Bob, but shooting ourselves in the foot, and just gonna go through the defensive side and see what I see.
Look forward to it, man. Appreciate you for dropping by.
Thank y'all. Have a good one.
Absolutely. You too. Yeah, he does great stuff.
He's a man.
Coach. Yeah. I've had him on the channel before. Good surprise there. Let's continue to work through the guest lines. How are you doing on time, Spen? You okay?
I've got till the top of the hour, my friend.
Okay. Let's go for about 12 more minutes then. Manuel's COD channel waiting here. Again, what I'll do is, since there's a lot of comments coming in, I will once again drop the link in if you want to join the channel, if you want to join the conversation for a quick 30-second blurb on what we all watched unfold yesterday in Baltimore. You can do so via FaceTime with our new guest feature here in StreamYard. Manuel's COD channel. What's going on? Where are you calling in from? What do you want to talk about?
Hey, I'm calling in from Mexico, man. So We got some Ravens fans over here, even though it's a little sample, but still, we're all
Nice.
around the rule.
Love it.
Hey, yesterday, I don't know. I wanted to keep it clean, the channel, like Engraven does. But yesterday was a clusterfuck of everything.
I'm going to keep it clean, but,
I can't right now because I'm mad.
Sorry, Engraven, I know. Sorry.
Engraven, we're sorry. We're very sorry.
We're very sorry for that.
I feel like I need that ESPN McAfee dump button, Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll give you $5 right now. No, but we lost the game. Like, Colts, I think they just took advantage of everything we did for us to shoot ourselves in the foot. But if we look at it, we got Cleveland next week. We go to England. We have to go to Pittsburgh, and we're down 20 of our 53. Like I counted yesterday when the injury report, we have 11 starters on offense down. We have 9 of our starters on defense down. That's 20 of the 53-man roster. I don't know how we're going to go through that stretch because it's going to be like Hell Week times 3 because of the way the defense are playing in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I don't know how we're going to fare in England. I mean, we don't want a reminder of that Jacksonville game of 40-something to 3. So my question to you is, how do you see it? How do you see us go through it? Because I don't know, with this makeshift offensive line, defensive, I don't know, backs of, I think it's the second or third team going in.
Yeah.
So
hey, we'll react to it right now. All right. Thanks for the call in, brother, and hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Talk to you, man. So I wanted to bring up the injury report going into the weekend, Spen, because I think if there's any room for positivity here, it's that, and none of this is confirmed, but this is the feeling that I'm getting based on just following this. Other than Marcus Williams, do you think that any of these injuries that we're looking at right now are like significant season ending? I don't. Our Darius Washington looks like his chest injury is, according to what Harb said last week, which is a huge disappointment. He's a great story. Former undrafted rookie, was playing great for them. But that to me is one of the positive. I know this is a big list with key starters, and this does not include Tyus Bowser, right? And whatever happened to Gus Bus yesterday in the concussion protocol. But you know where I'm at on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe, and this is me speculating purely, so feel free to tear into me in the comments, whatever you like. But I think that the Ravens thought the Browns game, the Steelers game, divisional games, your ability to take 2 teams in your division that you expect to be very competitive and get a game up advantage on them was more important than having a healthy full team for this Sunday's game against Gardner Minshew and the Colts. I think the Ravens felt like they could handle business. Lamar Jackson versus Gardner Minshew, you're going to take Lamar Jackson to win that game 99 times out of 100. But again, 3 fumbles, weren't able to retain any of them, weren't able to scoop the one they gave you, made some clock management issues, had a couple drops, took a sack. It was the perfect storm to lose that game. So I think that we'll see at least 2 of, if not more, Odell Beckham, Justice Hill, Marlon Humphrey, Tyler Linderbaum, and Ronnie Stanley back in this game. Odafe Owe, just to speculate, again, not any objectiveness here, but just to speculate, was in a walking boot, the ankle. Hey, maybe that's a 2, 3, 4 week deal. I'm a 5-time ankle sprain survivor, actually, so I know very well. I sprain my ankle all the time. So, hey, if he's in a boot, it might hurt. But I think they'll get at least one of the offensive linemen back. I think they'll get probably a Marlon Humphrey or an Odell Beckham back in the next week or 2. So all points there. But the question that I always have when you pull up an injury report like that, and the question I had ahead of this Colts game was, yeah, that sounds really bad. And then what? And then what's going to happen on Sunday? Who's going to get banged up on Sunday? It was Gus Edwards. They end up having
not just Gus either.
David Ajabo misses most of that game, pretty much the entire game. So the injury report's bad, but then it's what happens today or what happens on game day after that. There's always going to be a guy or two, for the most part, I think, in pretty much every game that has to leave the game early. Football is a contact violent sport. That's how it is. So when you're that thin and then you lose 2 more guys that you were expecting to count on, you're just that much thinner.
Yeah. Geno Stone on that collision with Brandon Stevens and Pittman, which, by the way, I'm getting dragged by Colts Nation today because of I put out a few tweets about the no calls. Of course it goes both ways. There was no call on Pittman. It was one of the most ridiculous catches that I've ever seen. But that collision right there that whipped his helmet off, Geno got the brunt of that. He leaves for like a snap or 2 snaps, if I'm not mistaken, and comes back in. This guy's tough as nails. So let's see how he tracks this week. Who else? Travis Jones was down for a minute or so. Ajabo basically missed all the game, to your point. So outside linebacker right now, it's good. It's a dang good thing that, like Justin Houston was this time last year, Spen, Jadeveon's sipping from the fountain of youth on the other side of 30, isn't he?
He definitely is. And hey, man, he's got those incentives in his contract for playing time, and he is certainly getting playing time to go after those incentives. So I think the Ravens communicated that those were going to be things that we expect you to probably hit, especially early on. Clowney has played really well, has made an impact in all 3 games so far, especially as a run defender, been able to go get some quarterback hits, has a sack here and there, but they need him to get him to the trade deadline. That is my opinion on Jadeveon Clowney, a guy that, hey, he is older, he has a lot of wear and tear, and has played a very physical style of football. If he can get them to the trade deadline, I think that's where we see the Ravens make an acquisition, as long as Marlon Humphrey is able to integrate back in. The Ravens and Eric DeCosta have proven that they like getting defensive additions at the deadline. I think it's a little easier I think defense is a little more universal, where you can step into a new team and start. We saw it with Roquan Smith, Marcus Peters, a lot of acquisitions. On the offensive side of the ball, little more timing required, little more practice time required to really get up to speed. We haven't really seen that many trade deadline around the NFL. Emmanuel Sanders on the 49ers a few years ago comes to mind. I'm sure there's a couple more, but I think the Ravens are going to look to go solidify that room ahead of the deadline and maybe bring in a running back at some point if things don't continue to go their way, which to again, tap to Colin Coward, I'm guilty till proven innocent. I need a running back until I somehow don't. So I think that's where the Ravens are going to have to look to make sure they have enough firepower and get going.
2 more guest calls. Let's sneak these in before you got to leave at 2:00. Tyler's been waiting for a while. Tyler, you're inside this the lunch hour conversation. I was going to say inside the vault, but we're on like 15 different channels right now simulcasting. So over 500 people in this room right now. Tyler, where are you calling in from? What do you want to talk about?
Calling in from North Carolina, guys, and just had a special teams question, just because it just seems so weird for a Harbaugh-led team to be so poor. I don't know if Spencer was at the game yesterday, but they pretty much had everybody on the front line on that free kick, and I just don't understand what the thought process is to even instruct a fair catch on that. And then on the second point on the special teams, we had at one point a gunner run behind the punt returner, and he didn't call for a fair catch, and then ran it up the left sideline for like, I think 30, 40 yards and set up another field goal for them. So just what are your thoughts on the special teams so far?
Appreciate the call, Tyler. Yeah, thanks for calling in from North Carolina, but hasn't been good enough, especially for a John Harbaugh-led team. Matter of fact, I would imagine those meetings are going to be a bloodbath this week because the punt coverage team's not been great. They've really missed Justice Hill as their gunner, as you just heard there from Tyler, Spen, and but then you want to take the fair catch part of his question?
Yeah, the fair catch. So the Ravens were anticipating an onside kick, which is possible because the punt is a free kick, meaning that the kicking team can retain possession if they get to the ball after it passes 10 yards, unlike a punt or a field goal. So they lined up expecting that. The communication we did talk about earlier, John Harbaugh, I don't know why he didn't call a timeout. It was a mistake in hindsight not to make sure that you got that right at all costs. The Colts were dialed in, took advantage of those mistakes. As a coaching perspective, I think John Harbaugh was outcoached on Sunday. He was outmanned with some guys down, which I think leads to the second issue of making mistakes, running past a returner, and then he runs up the sideline. It expands into, okay, you have Worley, for instance, playing over 100 snaps because he's typically someone you rely on for special teams. He isn't a primary defensive player, let alone, a heavy rotational guy. When you have guys that are in defined roles that you're depending on for special teams, usually your third running back, your fourth linebacker, your third and fourth linebacker, your third safety, your fourth, fifth, and sixth corners, your third tight end, all of those guys, Pat Ricard, for instance, That's pretty much your special teams. But suddenly, your third safety, your fourth corner, your third running back are all playing a full game. They're a little less dialed in. It's hard. It's hard to focus on that expanded role and get everything right when you're switching units. That's kind of like what we see Shohei Ohtani do. He's going on to different sides of the ball, essentially. Suddenly he's playing special teams, a different role than playing defensively. So it's hard to have that many guys prepared, but that's not an excuse. You have to execute. So, it comes down to everybody that is on that entire roster, including practice squad guys, you hope are prepared situationally. And if not, then who does it come down to? The coaching staff needs to take the brunt of that for not having them prepared. So, Harbaugh typically does have those guys ready to roll, but when you get deeper and deeper and more guys playing more snaps, it leads to an increased margin for error of guys that haven't had enough practice time in those expanded roles.
Did I see Darryl Worley played over 100? Logged over 100 snaps?
He logged over 100 total snaps. Like Travis Hunter at Colorado, we talk about him all the time. That's how many snaps Travis Hunter's playing, and Worley played that many. So It was a lot for him and for a lot of guys on this team that aren't maybe used to that, but next man up, gotta have guys prepared. At the end of the day, there's no excuses. They're all professionals, regardless of if you're a first stringer, a third stringer, or practice squad, whatever it is. So, Cardinals beat the Cowboys.
Cardinals did beat the Cowboys. And Miami, as I've mentioned multiple times, hung a 70 spot on Sean Payton's Denver Broncos. So that will have him shutting up for a little while, and you would think. But Spenny, what do you and the boys got coming up on Exit 52?
You can check out Exit 52 podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. We record after the game live reaction. We do the jumbo set every single Wednesday morning. You can hear that. That will be an in-depth breakdown of what happened after we've watched the tape, gotten a little deeper into things past maybe what, national pundits are talking about, but dialed into crunching the tape, coming back, and then moving forward. Then we do a preview episode that comes out every Friday. So you can hear us after every Ravens game, every Wednesday and Friday morning. You can always check out me at Ravens for Dummies on Twitter. You can follow us at Exit 52 on Instagram or on Twitter as well. And you'll see all those updates. Bobby, love you, man. Doing a great job. Proud of you. You're the best. Go subscribe, like, share. Bobby, the Vault. Sarah does a great job. Bobby's got an awesome, awesome setup. The most professional content creator in Baltimore by far. Look at that setup he's got, man. Look at mine. Look at where I am. Look at where Bobby is.
Hey.
So give Bobby all the love. Give him all the flowers. Like this, share it, subscribe it. We want to keep bringing you guys more content. So like and subscribe. That's the easiest way to support us so we can support that content and bring you guys fun. So thanks, man. Love you. Have a great, great, great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
I love you, brother. Sounds good. I'm going to do my my sponsor note here. So if you got to go, you do your thing. But I'll talk to you soon, Spen. Thanks so much for dropping by. I want to shout out and thank a couple of my returning patrons who are supporting me and everything I do here inside the channel through Patreon this month. Lamar Dixon and Neil Fleur. Appreciate both of you guys for believing in what I'm building here in Baltimore and beyond. And if you guys are interested in doing the same, visit patreon.com/Bobby Trossett to learn more. And then just a quick note about this episode's title sponsor, my friends at Primary Residential Mortgage. It's been working with them for a little while now, and I'm really just appreciating the opportunity because the commonality between sports and mortgages, right, a number of things. Both involve strategic planning, teamwork, and achieving goals. In mortgages, individuals and families plan for their financial structure by securing a home loan, strategizing their finances, and working with a team of professionals. Similarly, in sports, teams strategize, collaborate, and work together to achieve victory and attain their goals. The commonality between sports and mortgage loans lies in the concept of achieving goals through careful planning, teamwork, and strategy. So if you're looking to purchase your very first or perhaps your 30th home, whether you're in Maryland or another state, my good friends at Primary Residential Mortgage are here to help. They're your local lender. They've got 18 different locations across the Mid-Atlantic. PRMI offers everything from loan options to refinancing to down payment assistance programs, one of which is the Maryland Mortgage Program, or what they refer to as MMP. MMP is a home financing program available in the state of Maryland, which assists residents in purchasing homes, especially first-time home buyers or those with specific financial needs. MMP provides benefits such as down payment assistance, lower interest rates, or other forms of financial support to make home ownership more accessible. So if you're interested, if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to this awesome team of loan experts at PRMI. Last year alone, their Mid-Atlantic team helped and served about 2,800 home buyers here locally. So I promise you'll be in good, experienced hands. You can find more by visiting the website link that I have included in the show notes below. In terms of what's to come, no Roquan Smith this week. Of course, Sarah and I have an exclusive partnership with him throughout the course of this season. We're doing 10 shows with him. So 10 throughout 17 weeks works out to be like not every other, but almost, well, pretty much every other. But long story short, we will reconnect with him probably in early October. So be on the lookout for that information. As you've seen on the bottom line here, I am now officially going to London with my friends at Be More Around Town. I'll be out there across the pond from October 11th through the 18th, providing content. Really very much looking forward to going out there. I've been to Europe several times, but I've never been to London. So if you have plans, if you have itineraries in place and you want to get together out there at a tailgate or a bar or whatever, I am totally down. Would love to hear from you. So connect with me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it might be, and hit me up at Bobby Baltimore and let me know what's going on. If you're interested in donating to the channel, you can do so through Venmo or Cash App. And I do have a brand new revamped Bobby Baltimore Discord server, which is a free 24/7 hub for conversations surrounding Baltimore sports. You can find the link in the show notes below. So with that, unless we have one more guest that wants to drop in, so why not? Kel Stevens, you're on the show and you're muted right now, but I'll take one more call before I finish up this stream if you can figure out how to unmute it. Apparently not, but anyway. All right, guys, with that, thanks. We're going to be doing a lot more live streaming, as you've probably already noticed. So looking forward to providing that, especially on Mondays, just like Overreaction Mondays and stuff. So thanks a lot. Sarah and I will be back in Morning Vault fashion on Tuesday. John Harbaugh's press conference is like 25 minutes from now, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll talk to you guys later. Appreciate you for dropping by the channel.